story. She shows various ways how several different scholars have translated several different whole chapters, whole books in the Old Testament differently. And the differences are shocking. So that if you're reading the Old Testament using the NIV or the King James Version or whatever, you have to understand you're simply reading someone else's interpretation. You're not getting the original meaning of what the Scripture's about. And they have their biases also. And she's very good at showing that. And so what she does is she says there's 5 or 6 or 7 different ways to, and she shows you step by step how you can write these out, how you can explore, how you can take apart and explore the verbs, how you can analyze and realize how the structures of nouns change the meaning. You discuss, you find all of the prepositions, you show all of the different adverbs. You learn the importance of first person, second person, third person. You recognize the value of seeing the feminine as opposed to the masculine. And when you gather all of these types of analysis together and the different tenses, whether it's speaking of the past or the future, and then you begin to explore the Hebrew and take it apart, piece by piece, and write down all of the potential meaning of the morphology, the structure, the semantic range, the usage, the etymology, the contextual data that the word and sentence is embedded within, and compare the various forms of the root and the radicals and so on and so forth with all the other forms in all the other places, whether in the Bible or out of the Bible, then you have the capability, you have the potential to begin to translate. But there's an enormous amount of work first before you start translating. And her analysis of Judges 4, I don't have time to give it to you. The text linguistics was one of the best parts of her chapter. Just information structure, and she goes through the functional grammar and the tagonomics, and then she does a text linguistic analysis of Judges chapter 4. And it's beautiful. She goes through the entire chapter, step by step, verse by verse. And she is comparing the Hebrew Masoretic text with the words in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then she looks into the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, and she says, how did the Greek translate that specific word? And she finds places where the Greek would translate a certain Hebrew word one way in this chapter, and yet later they would use a different Greek word for the same Hebrew word. And translated into English, it's the same English word, but the Greek had a difference. Why? She teaches you to ask why. That's the wonder of this. It is just so interesting how she puts all of her information together in an integrated approach into a solid unity of using and exploring all of the tools available to you once you begin to understand how the Hebrew works, how the text analysis works. She gives you hints and clues on where to look for clues, how to look for clues. Why is this word in Hebrew spelled this way, yet it's spelled differently in another context, and it's still spelled differently in yet another context? And does the Greek Septuagint translate and spell that Hebrew word the same throughout? And how do the various different English translations transpose and present this word to us? And she shows very powerfully how through translation we lose meaning. We have to get to the point to where we know the languages. And there is no such thing as a pure or a proper translation that fully, accurately portrays the ancient meaning. So the best we can do is compare all of the different cultures, all of the different semantic ranges and uses of the words that they use. And even with all of these magnificent tools, with our computer helps that we have right now today, which has just increased the magnanimity and the magnitude of potential understanding in light years, and yet we still can translate a text. We can fully use all of the scholarly tools to translate a text and not know what it means. That is so crazy, but she shows that. So we have to be careful when we say, well, we know. Maybe, maybe not. Realistically, it leans further toward the maybe not. So you have to stay humble. You have to be willing to go through an enormous amount of work, assuming you want to know what this stuff means. And her analysis is absolutely superb. I would strongly recommend, once you've studied the Hebrew a little bit, and it would help if you had a little bit of Greek background. That's not necessary, but it's always helpful. All you basically need is a concordance. I've got the NIV concordance by Kohlenberger, and I could use it, and then I've got a Septuagint concordance, and I could look up the words. So it's not that big a deal. It's not a problem. I also have BibleWorks 5.0, and that's extremely helpful. I just simply type in the Greek or Hebrew word, and bam, it comes up if it's there. Sue Groom, Linguistic Analysis of Biblical Hebrew. I would strongly recommend that book. That is a good book. Truly. 4-star. Enjoy learning some things that you've never thought you knew. Truly. It's a great book for that reason.